but it's what we're willing to do in order to get the things we feel are fair. Napheesa Collier on the ongoing CBA negotiations and the potential of sitting out. Let's hear it, Napheesa.
On the CBA, hitting crunch time. Time is running out. Adam Silver talks about the 11th hour.
That blank stare right there, that's the face of someone who genuinely believes threatening to strike is going to work. Napheesa Collier, WNBA Players Association Vice President, just went on record saying the players are prepared to sit out the entire season if they don't get what they want in CBA negotiations. And the league's response? Well, let's just say it's probably not what she's hoping for.
They're probably saying to themselves, oh no, please, no, don't strike. Do anything but that, please. You know what? You're right. 15%, 16%, that's too little. In fact, 30% is too little for you ladies. How about this? How about we turn over 100% of the league to you guys, and we'll take a step back. You guys can run the teams. You guys can run the ownership. You guys can run the front office. We'll all just fall to the wayside. As crazy as that sounds, I wouldn't be surprised if that's what these players are actually hoping the owners are feeling.
Here's what actually happens when owners hear strike threats from a league that's been operating in the red for nearly 3 decades. They don't panic. They don't immediately cave to demands. They run the numbers. And those numbers tell a very different story than the one players seem to believe. The WNBA has lost money in 28 of its 29 seasons. That's not speculation. That's documented financial reality. So when Collier says they want what's fair, we need to ask a fundamental question. What exactly is fair when the product isn't profitable?
Year and a half, the executive committee has been urging everyone to save their money because we knew the negotiations were coming up. We never know what's going to happen. You know, if there's not a season, we want to make sure everyone's prepared. So hopefully everyone has been doing that. That's something we've been talking about for a really long time. But also that is something that we check in with everyone, you know, because opinions change over time. And that is something that has stayed consistent, that people, no matter, you know, middle tier, the people at the top, rookies, everyone has been really consistent in that we want a season to happen. But if we don't get the things that we are wanting to stay 10 toes down on, then we're going to sit out for as long as that takes. Like, that's not what anyone wants, but it's what we're willing to do in order to get the things that we feel.
Now watch this part carefully. She's telling players to save their money because negotiations are coming. They've been urging everyone for a year and a half to prepare financially in case there's no season. But here's the problem with that strategy. Everything we've heard from these same players over the past 2 years is that they don't have money to save. Breanna Stewart has talked about financial struggles. Nneka Ogwumike has discussed the challenges of WNBA salaries. Multiple players have emphasized the need to play overseas just to make ends meet. So which is it? Are they saving money for a potential strike, or are they barely getting by on current salaries? Because those two narratives cannot coexist.
Then we're going to sit out for as long as that takes. Like, that's not what anyone wants, but it's what we're willing to do in order to get the things that we feel are fair.
How do you feel about where things stand right now?
I think that things are moving. Like, we are not where we want to be, but I think negotiations are trending in the right direction. And that's what you want. You want movement. You don't want to be in a stalemate. You want there to be hope for the future. And I do have that. I think there has to be a lot of movement in in a lot of places in the CBA, but the fact that we are moving, I think, is really hopeful.
The executive committee wants everyone prepared. From middle-tier players to rookies, everyone's supposedly on board with sitting out as long as it takes. That's the unified front they're presenting. But let's think about what that actually means in practice. The top players, the ones making maximum salaries and getting endorsement deals, they can potentially weather a work stoppage. But what about the player making the league minimum of $64,000? What about the rookie who just got drafted and is counting on that first paycheck? The financial realities are vastly different depending on where you sit in the salary structure.
Not what we want, but it's what we're willing to do to get the things we feel are fair. We want the things that we're going to stay 10 toes down on. Well, here we go. What are you guys willing to stay 10 toes down on? We've just witnessed you guys move off your 10 toes down stance. One of the issues that you guys were staying 10 toes down on, you've already conceded some ground. So whatever 10 toes down leverage you thought you had. Newsflash, just a newsflash. Don't take my word for it. The leverage is gone once you start moving off your pivot.
And here's where the leverage argument completely falls apart. Collier says they're standing 10 toes down on their demands. They're not budging, except they already did budge. Reports from February 2025 confirmed that players have already made concessions on some of their initial demands in the CBA negotiations. Once you move off your position, once you show willingness to compromise, you've signaled that your line in the sand isn't actually a line, it's a suggestion. Negotiation 101, the moment you blink first, the other side knows exactly how far they can push you.
We're headed in the right direction. Hopefully we get a season started. We're working on it. We're moving in the right direction. We've conceded a few things. We understand how negotiations work. And hopefully we come to an agreement to where we can get the show on the road. Not, oh, we need what's fair. We need what's, well, what's fair if you guys don't make any money? Like, what's actually fair? What is actually...
Let's talk about what owners are actually thinking when they hear these threats. They're looking at the financial data. They're seeing that the WNBA averaged 1.2 million viewers across all ESPN networks last season. That sounds decent until you realize that number is heavily skewed by one factor, Caitlin Clark. Indiana Fever games featuring Clark pulled massive ratings. Games without her, significantly lower. The league's median viewership for non-Fever games was likely around 650,000 viewers. That's the actual baseline interest in the product.
Are fair.
How do you feel about where things stand right now?
I think that things are moving. Like, we are not where we want to be, but I think negotiations are trending in the right direction. And that's what you want. You want movement. You don't want to be in a stalemate. You want there to be hope for the future. And I do have that. I think there has to be a lot of movement in some, in a lot of places in the CBA, but the fact that we are moving, I think, is really hopeful.
So when players threaten to strike, owners aren't thinking, oh no, we'll lose all this revenue. They're thinking, what revenue? The league has been subsidized by the NBA for its entire existence. Every team is owned by either an NBA franchise or someone wealthy enough to absorb annual losses. These aren't businesses operating on thin profit margins that can't afford a work stoppage. These are passion projects and tax write-offs. The financial pressure from a strike lands almost entirely on the players, not the owners.
You guys have been operating a lemonade stand for the last 30 years. A lemonade stand for the last 30 years. None of you guys can sell anything. You can't sell lemonade. You can't sell, what else do you have? Some sweet tea maybe at the lemonade stand. You guys can't sell any of it. And then suddenly Caitlin Clark comes down the block. Hey guys, what's going on? We're just trying to sell this lemonade. It's a tough day out here. Oh, it's tough. Let me see if I can give you help. Car pulls up. Car pulls up. Hey, you want some lemonade? Oh, no, I can't. I got a party to go to. Oh, well, just buy all of our lemonade and take it to your party. Oh, that's a great idea. Boom. Lemonade stand now makes a ton of money. Is it because of anybody else that worked at lemonade stand, or is it because of that one person at that lemonade stand? And how many more salesmen like Caitlin Clark are you going to have start working at that lemonade stand? I could have used a car dealership, but these are more children that we're working with, so I have to use a childish analogy for them. Pardon me. Let's get into some funny things, shall we? We like to laugh around here, right? We like to laugh around here. Please like, comment, and subscribe. ESPN to launch Women's Sports Sundays. You already know where this is going. This is now turned into a WNBA roasting session. Yes, debuting this summer. It's a first of its kind weekly primetime franchise showcasing the best of women's sports in premium windows. They're gonna have the WNBA and NWSL. Here we go. The decline of ESPN from the greatest channel on TV into an unwatchable, self-righteous source of pure DEI is just incredible. Damn. Incredible stuff you've decided on. I'm pretty sure you're retarded, but hang on.
Here's the lemonade stand analogy that perfectly captures this situation. You've been running a lemonade stand for 30 years. Nobody's buying your lemonade. You're losing money every single year. Then one day, a new person shows up at your stand. Suddenly, cars are pulling over. People are buying everything you have. Your stand is finally making money. But it's not because of the lemonade recipe. It's not because of your marketing. It's because of that one person who just arrived. That's Caitlin Clark. She's the reason the stand is finally profitable. And now everyone who was there during the 30 losing years wants to act like they're equally responsible for the success. The numbers back this up. Clark's rookie season generated an estimated $200 million in additional revenue for the league through increased ticket sales, merchandise, and broadcast rights. Her games averaged over 2 million viewers. Games without her averaged less than a third of that. This isn't subjective opinion, these are Nielsen ratings. One player fundamentally changed the league's financial trajectory in a single season.
Pardon me. Let's get into some funny things, shall we? We like to laugh around here, right? We like to laugh around here. Please like, comment, and subscribe. ESPN to launch women's sports Sundays. You already know where this is going. This is now turned into a WNBA roasting session. Yes, debuting this summer. It's a first of its kind weekly primetime franchise showcasing the best of women's sports in premium windows. They're going to have the WNBA and NWSL. Here we go. The decline of ESPN from the greatest channel on TV into an unwatchable, self-righteous source of pure DEI is just incredible. Damn. Incredible stuff you've decided on. I'm pretty sure you're retarded, but hang on.
And now ESPN is doubling down on women's sports with their new Women's Sports Sundays programming block launching this summer. Primetime windows featuring WNBA and NWSL games. The network is betting significant resources on this content, but look at the response from sports fans online. They're not excited, they're annoyed. Comments like bartenders are going to be pissed having to change the channel, and now I'll be watching Sunday Night Baseball on NBC instead, dominate the discussion. ESPN is trying to force viewership through premium placement, but you can't manufacture interest that doesn't organically exist. Sunday Night Baseball on ESPN averaged 1.8 million viewers last season. That's a proven product with decades of audience loyalty. The WNBA averaged 1.2 million across all ESPN networks including ABC, and that number is inflated by fever games. Take out Indiana, take out the handful of marquee matchups, and you're looking at viewership that can't justify primetime Sunday slots. The network is making a political and social decision, not a business decision. And that's fine, but let's not pretend the audience demand is there.
You're getting very, very sleepy. Look into my eyes. Look into my eyes. I'm sorry, folks. I can't help myself. The blank stare from Napheesa Collier kind of cracks me up a little bit. This isn't what I want. This isn't what any of us want.
Back to the strike threat. What leverage do players actually have? In traditional sports labor negotiations, players have leverage because the league can't operate without them, and the financial losses are immediate and catastrophic. When NBA players threaten to strike, owners lose billions in ticket sales, broadcast revenue, and sponsorships. The pain is real and quantifiable. But in the WNBA, where the league already operates at a loss, where most revenue is subsidized by the NBA, where viewership outside of a few stars is minimal, what exactly are players threatening to take away? The answer is uncomfortable, but true. Not much. If the WNBA season doesn't happen in 2025, the NBA still makes its money. ESPN still has content to fill those time slots. Fans who watch basketball will watch something else. The financial impact on ownership is negligible because there's no profit being lost. The entire leverage dynamic is inverted compared to traditional sports negotiations.
We don't get the things that we are wanting to stay 10 toes down on, then we're going to sit out for as long as that takes. Like, that's not what anyone wants, but it's what we're willing to do in order to get the things that we feel are fair.
How do you feel about where things stand right now?
I think that things are moving. Like, we are not where we want to be, but I think negotiations are trending in the right direction. And that's what you want. You want movement. You don't want to be in a stalemate. You want there to be hope for the future. And I do have that.
Collier says negotiations are trending in the right direction, and there's hope for the future. That's the diplomatic answer. That's what you say when you're starting to realize your initial demands aren't going to be met. Players reportedly wanted 50% revenue sharing initially, similar to NBA and NFL models. That number has reportedly come down. They wanted elimination of the salary cap. That's likely off the table. They wanted chartered flights for all travel. The league has agreed to some charter flights, but not a complete overhaul. Every single major demand has been negotiated down from the opening position. This is how collective bargaining works. You start high, they start low, you meet somewhere in the middle. But the rhetoric from players suggested they weren't interested in meeting in the middle. They wanted transformational change. They wanted NBA-level compensation structures. And the reality is, setting in, that the financial foundation doesn't support those demands.
Napheesa Collier on the ongoing CBA negotiations and the potential of sitting out. Let's hear it, Napheesa.
On the CBA, hitting crunch time, time is running out. Adam Silver talks about the 11th hour, but I'm just wondering what conversations you've had with maybe that middle tier of player in terms of moving forward, and if there is a deal to be done, or if you do need to end up striking.
Well, for the past, I would say,
Let's address the core argument players keep making. They deserve a fair share of the revenue they generate. On the surface, that sounds reasonable. Professional athletes in profitable leagues typically receive 48 to 51% of revenue. The WNBA players currently receive approximately 10% and are pushing for 50%. But here's the critical difference. In profitable leagues, that revenue share comes from actual profit. In the WNBA, there is no profit. The league loses money. So what are players asking for? They're asking for a larger share of subsidized losses. The NBA reportedly contributes $15–20 million annually to each WNBA team just to keep them operational. That's not revenue sharing, that's life support. When players demand 50% of revenue, they're demanding 50% of money that doesn't exist without NBA subsidies. It's like demanding a raise at a company that's bankrupt but being kept alive by a parent corporation. The financial logic doesn't work.
And we'll take a step back. You guys can run the teams. You guys can run the ownership. You guys can run the front office. We'll all just fall to the wayside. As crazy as that sounds, I wouldn't be surprised if that's what these players are actually hoping the owners are feeling. As crazy as that sounds, a small part of me thinks to myself, they really think the owners are going to listen to this.
Here's what players should actually be saying in these interviews. We're working collaboratively with the league to find a sustainable path forward. We understand the financial realities while also advocating for better compensation as the league grows. We're optimistic we can reach an agreement that works for everyone. That's the message that builds public support. That's the message that acknowledges reality while still fighting for improvements. Instead, we get strike threats and demands for what's fair without acknowledging that fairness in business is determined by profitability, not feelings. You can't demand NBA salaries with WNBA revenues. You can't threaten to strike when you have no leverage. You can't claim to be standing 10 toes down when you've already compromised on major positions. The disconnect between the rhetoric and reality is staggering. So let's bring this full circle. Napheesa Collier and the WNBA Players Association are playing a very dangerous game. They're making public threats they can't back up. They're demanding compensation structures the league can't afford. They're claiming unity while asking players who can barely pay rent to sacrifice their salaries for an indefinite work stoppage. And they're doing all of this while the league is experiencing its first real growth in 29 years, almost entirely because of one player they've spent the season resenting. The Caitlin Clark effect is real. The ratings prove it. The ticket sales prove it. The merchandise sales prove it. She brought millions of new fans to the WNBA in her rookie season. Fans who had never watched a game before are now buying League Pass subscriptions. Arenas that were half empty are now selling out. And instead of building on that momentum, instead of capitalizing on the first legitimate star the league has produced who can move the needle with casual fans, we're talking about a potential strike. Think about the optics of that. The WNBA finally has mainstream attention. ESPN is giving them primetime slots. Sponsors are increasing their investments. And the players' response is to threaten to not play? That's not leverage. That's self-sabotage. You don't threaten to strike when you're finally winning. You strike when you have no other options, when you're being exploited, when the power dynamic is so skewed that drastic action is the only path forward. None of those conditions exist in the current WNBA landscape. The league has made significant improvements over the past 2 years. Salaries have increased, travel conditions have improved, media coverage has expanded dramatically, sponsorship deals have grown. The trajectory is positive for the first time in league history, and players want to risk all of that momentum over CBA demands that aren't financially viable? It's short-sighted at best, delusional at worst. Here's what's going to happen. The players will continue making noise about striking. The union will hold firm on a few key issues. The league will make some additional concessions, probably around travel and working conditions rather than massive salary increases. Both sides will claim victory. A deal will get done right before the season starts, and we'll all move on. Because at the end of the day, players need their paychecks more than owners need the league to operate. That's the fundamental power dynamic. And no amount of tough talk changes it. but the damage from this negotiation process will linger. Fans who are just discovering the WNBA don't want to hear about labor disputes. They don't want to hear players complaining about salaries while the games they're watching are half empty outside of fever matchups. They don't want to hear strike threats when they're trying to enjoy the product. Casual fans don't care about CBA negotiations. They care about watching good basketball, and every day this plays out in public, the league loses a little bit of the goodwill it spent 29 years trying to build. The smartest move players could make right now is to take the best deal available, play the 2025 season, continue building on the Caitlin Clark momentum, grow the fan base, increase revenues organically, and then negotiate from a position of actual strength in the next CBA cycle. Instead, they're trying to force transformational change before the transformation has actually happened. You can't demand to be paid like the NBA when your viewership is a fraction of NBA levels. You can't demand 50% revenue sharing when there's no revenue to share. You can't threaten to strike when the financial impact of your absence is minimal. Napheesa Collier seems like a smart person. She's a talented player and a respected leader. But this strategy isn't working. The public messaging is backfiring. The threats ring hollow. And the disconnect between what players think they deserve and what the market can actually support is wider than ever. Someone needs to step back, look at the actual data, acknowledge the financial realities, and chart a more pragmatic course forward. Because here's the truth, nobody wants to say out loud. If the WNBA season doesn't happen in 2025, the league might not recover. The momentum will be lost. The casual fans will move on. The media coverage will evaporate. The sponsors will redirect their investments. And all the progress made over the past 2 years will vanish. That's not a threat. That's a prediction based on how sports business works. You can't go dark for a year and expect everyone to come back when you return. It doesn't work that way. So the question for Napheesa Collier and the Players Association is simple. Are you willing to risk everything you finally achieved for demands the league can't meet? Are you willing to sacrifice the first real growth period in WNBA history because you want to be paid like NBA players despite generating a fraction of NBA revenue? Are you willing to let perfect be the enemy of good? The clock is ticking. Training camps are supposed to start in a few weeks. The season is supposed to tip off in May, and right now, we're no closer to a deal than we were 6 months ago. Someone needs to blink. Someone needs to be the adult in the room. Someone needs to prioritize the long-term health of the league over short-term negotiating postures. Because if this actually goes to a strike, if there's no 2025 season, the WNBA might not survive, and then nobody gets paid. So what do you think? Are the players right to take this hardline stance? Do they actually have the leverage they think they have? Or are they about to make the biggest strategic mistake in league history? Let me know in the comments. And if you found this analysis valuable, hit that like button and subscribe for more WNBA coverage, because this story is far from over.